is. Let's get it. Hey, locker room. Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize every angle's what we really do. We the source. We the pulse of the city too. Landlocked. Got the game in the headlock. Localize every time. Can't stop, won't stop. Yeah, we top 2 and we not too. Plugged in daily digital on YouTube. We got taste for days.
Welcome to the Locker Room, the number one source for Texans daily digital content. I'm Landry Locker. You can hear me Monday through Friday, 10 to 2. Sports Radio 610 and the Odyssey app. We got to get to the bottom of this. There's a lot of stuff going on these internet streets, on these media type streets. And let's just unpack it. If you've never been, subscribe, like, ride along. Appreciate you for coming through. This is what we do. Is DeAndre Hopkins, is the noise real or are we getting punked? You see the thumbnail. Some of y'all don't even know that there was a show once upon a time called Punked, but there was one, and basically they just prank people. I think Nick Cannon and Kevin Hart have actually kind of remade it. It's called Celebrity Prank Wars. Very much enjoy that show. And is that what DeAndre Hopkins is doing? Put the comments in. If they're topical, we'll flow through them. If they're not, we'll get to them at the end, assuming that it is a interesting topic, at least through my perspective. And we will get to the bottom of it. And let's just start. And Abel says it best. It's true. It's on the internet. Isn't that a great way to live? If it's on the internet, it must be true. I'll start with where the noise is coming from, and let's just start where it came out from originally. And I saw it on the internet streets. My boy Roosh Williams, shout out to him. Big fan of Roosh, what he does. That was where it first came out. People started getting the same type of information. And then Brooks Cabina, friend of the show, Brooks Cabina came out with his report as well today. I got to tell you, I have zero doubt in my mind. And I want to make this very clear. Like when we talk about are we being punked? Is it real? I have zero doubt in my mind that Nuke Hopkins is saying this. Roosh is very, very out in these Houston streets. I know he had a rap career. Actually, I think he had a song with Scarface, open for Mac Miller. And he's a very interesting dude. He's out here in these Houston streets. So I have no doubt that, and I would probably say that maybe even DeAndre Hopkins said something himself to Roosh. I've heard from other people that DeAndre is saying this as well. My thing is this, though. Why is he saying it? You can say a lot of stuff, and a lot of times you put stuff out there because maybe you don't necessarily want to end up at the place you're talking about, but maybe you want to generate some sort of attention or something like that. So why would DeAndre Hopkins want to be here? Like, really, why would DeAndre Hopkins want to be here? That's my question. And I know all of a sudden we're like saying, well, maybe he wants to play with CJ Stroud, and, maybe he loves Houston and he wants to be in Houston. I'm skeptical. And I think there's a reason you haven't seen a lot of like people that are quote unquote journalists run with it, because they're skeptical too. And a lot of times you can kind of get played to where someone tells you something and you run with it. Maybe DeAndre Hopkins is telling the truth, but I'm skeptical. And the natural question would be very simple. Why are you skeptical, Landry? Why are you skeptical? Well, because the man himself told you what he wanted. He was on the I Am Athlete podcast. He had his wish list. This was the wish list DeAndre Hopkins had when he was on the I Am Athlete podcast. Stable management, a QB who loves the game. Okay. I don't know if the management's stable. Nick Caserio's heading into his third year. A great defense. Don't necessarily have that because defense wins championship. Okay. Let's go back and listen to what DeAndre Hopkins actually said. This is DeAndre Hopkins on I'm Athlete, being asked about playing with a young quarterback.
Hi, Scott.
Any of these young rookie quarterbacks stand out to you? Do you want to catch a ball from a young player? Are you past that point in your career? Like some guys out there.
Yeah, I'm past that point in my career. But I heard that the quarterback we got from Houston is pretty good. I like him. My grandfather was sending me his highlights on YouTube. But
All right, so he's talking about Clayton Tune. That was when he was still with the Arizona Cardinals. So he said himself that wasn't what was on his wish list. So maybe he's changed his mind. Maybe DeAndre Hopkins is changing what he wants. Maybe he just wants to live in Houston, or maybe DeAndre Hopkins is the market is not what he thought it would be immediately, and DeAndre Hopkins is punking us on trying to jack up the price and trying to create excitement because he knows that he's rightfully beloved in Houston, and he knows that this is creating headlines and this is creating attention. Diana Rossini of ESPN, she said she believes the Patriots will be interested. She said Buffalo is in no hurry when it comes to making a decision. She said the Cowboys don't have interest and the Jets don't have interest. But we go back to what the man actually said and what his wish, and that's what it was. I do wonder what the market is with DeAndre Hopkins. Like, could we find a situation where maybe the market makes sense to where it makes sense for the Houston Texans to sign DeAndre Hopkins? Maybe that could happen. I don't think they originally had a plan, the Texans, to sign Dalton Schultz. I think the market kind of spoke to him, and they realized they could get one of the better pass-catching tight ends in the league for $9-10 million, whatever they ended up signing him to. I don't know that Sheldon Rankins was originally in the plans, but they paid him what they paid him. So they've shown that they can adjust to the market. My thing is, if DeAndre Hopkins, let's say that he wants the thing that happened that I'm sure DeAndre Hopkins is looking at right now is he's looking at the Odell Beckham Jr. contract and he's saying, I'm better than Odell. And Odell got that. Why can't I get that? So if the market speaks to DeAndre Hopkins, my question would be, is that something the Texans would be interested in? Where is their interest? And Justin Pearson brings up a very good point. Keep the comments rolling. Loving the interaction on there. You guys are always the best. Subscribe, like, all that. I'm going to bring in Texans Cap, get his POV on this. But Justin says, I heard there aren't many contenders that want him or can afford him. And that's true. At the moment, that's what Diana Rossini was talking about. So maybe that's a situation where it changes. But in an open market, it's just hard for me to imagine, family lives here or not, that DeAndre Hopkins would want to just come back to Houston. I don't doubt that he's saying it. I have zero doubt. I would bet my life that he's saying it. I just think there's a reason that it's out there. And I think that reason has been successful. Drive up the market. Just hired a new agent. I'm sure the agent has told people or someone that he's interested. I'm sure he said it himself. He loves the love here. And the city loves him. Alexander Hunter, I think it's both. He probably wouldn't mind playing in Houston and getting the bag as well as using this to get a big contract for a contender. What kind of big contract is DeAndre Hopkins going to get? At this point in his career, what kind of big contract is DeAndre Hopkins going to get? Seriously. He's 31 years old. He got suspended last year for PEDs. Before that, he was kind of roughed up. He's had the 2 worst years of his career. What kind of contract is he going to get? Furthermore, the fit here, I heard Seth Payne break this down. And I thought it was an interesting breakdown by Seth, because Seth is real, technical X's and O's. And there's a lot of guys that the Texans have that play in the slot. And there's a lot of talk that the Texans need a number one receiver. And a lot of Hopkins' production has actually been in the slot lately. So if he's looking for a big contract and the other teams aren't interested in paying him, like, what is that saying? Is this like a fallback plan? What changed? Seriously, what changed? He's going on tour saying one thing, and now he's saying something different. So just tell me what would have changed. Did he come in Houston and say, I want to play here? D'Amico was the coach. I mean, CJ Stroud was already the quarterback. I mean, it's not like that interview was in January before D'Amico was hired. He's talking about Clayton Tune with the Cardinals. I guess he's, trying to play nice with them. But it seems like we've kind of been all over the place with Nuke. First, it was, talk that he might get a big contract. Then there was talk about a trade. Then he came out and said, I don't want a new contract. Now there's some reports that he wants a new contract. There was talk about all these contenders. None of these contenders seem like overzealous to go get him. And now all of a sudden, he's interested in playing in Houston. What changed? What changed? And the other thing is, if we're talking about the possibility of DeAndre Hopkins, if we're talking about the possibility of DeAndre Hopkins coming here, and I keep hearing like, well, maybe you can get him. Sam just threw out a random number. 3 years, 45 with incentives. DeAndre Hopkins, if he outplays like a bargain deal, he's going to want a new deal. I don't blame him for it. I mean, I don't blame him at all. But that's where Nuke Hopkins is at right now in his career. So you can get him on a 1-year deal, the Odell Beckham Jr. deal. What does that benefit? What if the Texans start off badly? What if the Texans aren't that good? DeAndre Hopkins supposed to buy into some rebuild? Why would he at this point in his career? Why would he want to do that? You just heard him himself in his own words say, I'm over the young quarterback thing. So why would he want to do that? Why would, in his mindset with where he's at right now, why the hell would DeAndre Hopkins want to buy into that? And even then, is the ceiling high enough to validate DeAndre Hopkins coming here on a deal? What does that tell you? Why would that be? I see Alexander saying money. How much money do you want to pay him? Give me like the price for money. You think the Texans should money whip DeAndre Hopkins? Do you think that's smart for the Texans? Like, the only way it makes sense for the Texans to sign him is if it's a 1-year deal. At 31 years old, if people thought DeAndre Hopkins was the player he was 4 years ago, they would have traded for him. You could have had him for anything. You could have had him for anything. So if people thought, if people around the league thought DeAndre Hopkins was DeAndre Hopkins 4 years ago, you think I would be sitting here questioning signing DeAndre Hopkins? Hell no. No one would. People don't think that. Now, there are examples of guys after 31. And I see people, Cleveland is broke. You can make that work. You can make that dance. We saw the Rams do it for a long time. And Patton says, one quote doesn't define everything Hopkins is looking for because circumstances change, a.k.a. realizing contenders can't afford what he wants to get paid. Okay, so he comes here because other teams don't want him. How does that work? Like, how does that work? Like with what the Texans are trying to do and build. Like if let's say you're a 4-win team in December, and I'm more optimistic about the Texans. So I'm not saying that. What is the accomplishment for DeAndre Hopkins to go out there and play? Like, what are you doing to the progress of DeAndre Hopkins? Timeout Houston says I sound crazy. Tell me why, brother. Tell me why, brother. Tell me why. Lay it out. I mean, I'll give you the floor. Tell me why I sound crazy. I'm all ears, sir. Ma'am, whatever. Tell me why I'm crazy for this. I feel like I'm laying out some I'm laying out sense here. But I mean, that's me. I might be a little bit biased. He is going to turn 31 next week. So we will have a 31-year-old DeAndre Hopkins. Let's just use 3 examples. I got 3 examples of and timeout Houston, go ahead and lay out the case or whatever. Hell, you can drop me an email. I'll let you come on and explain it if you think you can. If you can. Julio Jones, the 3 seasons after 31. He played 29 games. He had 771, 434, 299, 6 total touchdowns, and 106 total catches. That was Julio Jones after 31. So 29 games, 771, 434, 299, 6 touchdowns, 106 catches. Okay. Andre Johnson. Now, he had 2 elite years after 31. He had 1 year where he had 112, 1598, and 4 touchdowns. What a damn shame that they couldn't get him in the end zone more. Good God. Just awful. Then he had 109, 1407, and 5. And then he had the under 1,000 the final year here, and he kind of drifted away in the other AFC South squads. So there was that with Dre. So there's a good example. There's a bad example. Larry Fitzgerald made 3 Pro Bowls after he turned 31. 3 straight Pro Bowls. So there are examples of that. There are examples for sure. Jared's bringing up the CJ thing. Landry is the same person they said they weren't going to getting CJ Stroud, and now he's saying they were not going to get D-Hop. I'm not listening to this dude. I didn't think they were drafting CJ Stroud, and I don't think people in his camp thought they were drafting CJ Stroud. I'm not saying what they are or aren't going to get DeAndre Hopkins. You don't have to listen to me. I can lay out sense, and you can do with it what you want, and you can have your take, and I can have mine. I did not think they were drafting CJ Stroud. Didn't pull that out of nowhere. They ended up deciding they could get both, which I actually threw out the possibility of before the draft. I don't think DeAndre Hopkins, if he had a lot of options, would want to play in Houston. That's what I'm saying. And I think the news is getting out there for a reason. I don't think it's because he's just dying to play in Houston. I think it's because other teams are not dying to bring in DeAndre Hopkins. I think if all things were equal and Baltimore was offering as much, the Jets, the Cowboys, the Browns, I think DeAndre would choose that. And I think with where the Texans are, it might not make as much sense. Who knows? Maybe he could end up here. Lamont says, I know Landry's about the money, but D-Hop is all about the attention too. There's a reason he's been trolling Houston for the last 3 years and now taking picks at NRG. He sees Miko and might want that. Yeah, for sure. I think it's easy to say that DeAndre likes the attention. He likes the love, and it's strong, validated love. He deserves all the love that he gets here. I was pissed off as anyone. I was live on the air when the DeAndre Hopkins thing happened, the trade. So I don't know. I don't know what he would want. Hopkins is still a legitimate wide receiver. Okay. How legitimate? That's what I'm asking. Like, how legitimate are we talking? Like, are we paying DeAndre Hopkins like an elite receiver? Like, what is legitimate? I'm not saying he's trash. I'm just asking how legitimate. What's the price? What's the price? All right, timeout, Houston. I'm a men, but you sound crazy to me because you're talking like he isn't good right now. He'd still be the best wideout in the division. I don't know about that. Maybe because the wide receivers are so bad, he probably would be top 5. I don't disagree with that. I mean, we've talked about how crappy the wide receiver position is, but I don't know. I don't think he's better. I don't know that he's better than Michael Pittman Jr. right now. Maybe he's better than Christian Kirk. I don't know. Is Christian Kirk going to build on what he did last year? And I don't know what Calvin Ridley's going to be. But you're right. Like if you're talking about the AFC South and how crappy that is, yeah, it's the wide receiver position's an absolute joke. I don't know how that makes me crazy though. I've acknowledged that if you want to simplify it and say he's better than any wide receiver that they have right now, like in a 1-year window, I don't disagree with that. Darwin says you're not going to get 3 elite years. Yeah, I mean, he's 31 years old. And we've seen the last 2 years have not been awesome. He's been kind of banged up, and then he got popped with the Peds. Patrick Storm, screw you. You're just a hater, Landry Locker. Shout out to Storm. One of the best folks I know when it comes to this Texans game. And you're just a jackass, my friend. And you just want linebackers. Shout out to him. Chris Jones has the bottom line. Anytime you start a post or a comment with the bottom line, this better be solid, sir. The bottom line is the Texans are going to need a long snapper after Weeks. See, this is solid right here. This is backing it up. They're going to need a long snapper after Weeks gets injured. That's where D-Hop comes in. Like where your head's at. Pal Pals asks, if they sign him, would you be mad? No. Are you kidding? You don't think DeAndre Hopkins would be good for the excitement, the attention, and all that type of stuff? Like, no, I wouldn't be mad. I'm just asking if it makes sense right now. I'm just wondering. And why this stuff is coming out. No, I wouldn't be mad if they signed DeAndre Hopkins at all. I don't be mad if they drafted or signed anyone. No, I would not be mad at all. Forever Royal says, what if he signs in Jacksonville? Why would they do that? They just got a bargain. They just got Calvin Ridley for $11 million. And they can completely punt on that at the end of the season. And they got the core that they got. So I don't think that they would do that. Terry says, I'm right on this one. D-Hop would be a bad example for the rookie receivers. I don't know if he'd be a bad example. I just think that with where he is right now, it's just a different point. It's just a different point of where he is and where they are. And I'm pro player POV. I'm pro team POV. I'm all about the POV. I know that sounds like a porn search or something like that. I'm all about the POV. Everybody's point of view. Everything makes sense. Your different points in your life, man. Like sometimes it makes sense for you to be in certain situations. Sometimes it doesn't. If I'm DeAndre Hopkins, I don't want to go to a situation where there's a rebuild. I don't even want to practice on Wednesday. Like this is veteran day off type of stuff. Like, so no, I don't fault him at all. Alexander says he'd be a top 15 wide receiver in the NFL. Okay. That's what's up. CR says, I was pissed. I remember listening to you that day. Hell yeah, I was effing pissed when DeAndre Hopkins got traded. You kidding me? I actually have a video on it. You can go back on the anniversary. We played it. Yeah, it was crazy. It was absolutely nuts. I'll ask Texans Cap about the actual numbers. Didn't Nuke put up 700 yards and 5 TDs with Colt McCoy? I think Stroud could get him easily over 1,000. Okay. Had a hell of a lot of targets last year too. Yeah, he's quarterback proof. He's absolutely quarterback proof. Storm calling for Isaiah Simmons. I like Isaiah Simmons. I'd love to see what they could do with him. I think the next squad he ends up on is going to be very pleased with what he does. More comments. What price do you feel D-Hop is worth ignoring off-field clutter? I mean, if I were him, I would be trying to get the Odell Beckham Jr. contract. I mean, I kind of feel like it was a weird contract. I don't want to say it's like as much of like an outlier as the Deshaun Watson deal or anything like that, but a guy who's had 2 torn ACLs in the last couple of seasons who I would think that DeAndre Hopkins likely thinks isn't on his level at this point, I mean, I would be trying to get that deal. I heard someone throw out, I think Rappaport threw out the Michael Thomas deal, $15 million incentives. But I think around that 1 year, 15 to 18 with incentives would be what I would think. Would the Texans have to money whip him? That's another question. Goyle Falcon, I want Hopkins back, but only on a 2-year deal with an option for a third. See, this is the thing. If you get him at a bargain and DeAndre Hopkins has a good year, he's going to be trying to get a new deal. It's just how it works. That's just how it's gonna go at this point in his career. So I think 1 year is the only way to go for sure. Cesar asks, could Cal McNair jump and make it happen if he knew it would help fill the stadium? I mean, is DeAndre Hopkins going to help fill the stadium? I don't think it would hurt, but I don't know. I mean, like, is there not enough excitement right now to get asses in seats? I would think so. I've seen that there's been kind of a jump in season tickets. I don't know. Curtis says, I want D-Hop. I can give you several reasons. I understand all the reasons. No doubt. Joel says, Bill O'Brien and the POS are gone. The door is open for Nuke. Yeah, but is it the same Nuke? I think that's what it goes back to. Adam says he was never super fast. He never got good separation. Hop is good because he catches footballs. Okay. I don't necessarily disagree. Josh said, I disagree with Clint Sterner's take today. Cal and Hannah have nothing against DeAndre Hopkins. He didn't want out. He just wanted more money. Well, I mean, if you know better than them, I've talked about this a little bit. I don't know whether they do or don't, but I kind of feel like Clint might have a little bit more grasp of that than you. But I'll take okay. I mean, I'm not saying they do. I'm just saying I'll probably put a little bit more stock in that one than what you're saying, my friend. No disrespect. There, Joshua's on one. I'm getting hate vibes from you on Hopkins. I don't know how you're getting those vibes. You might be trying to get them, buddy. There's no hate. There's nothing but love there. This is just straight ball. Matter of fact, I'm gonna put you in timeout there. You need to think about yourself. Just making up stuff, sir. That's 2. You can make up one thing per chat. You're gonna have to go right there. David says, I named my firstborn after DeAndre. Hell yeah, I want him in a Texans uniform. Would not be opposed to it. Give Stroud weapons to succeed. There you go, man. That's what's up. Naming your firstborn after DeAndre. I can respect that, dude. Does he have like a DeAndre Hopkins onesie? That would be nice. Credo says the only rookie QB he mentioned was CJ and said he was done, but they can't pay him. I don't know when he mentioned CJ. I haven't heard Nuke mention CJ at all. I heard him mention Clayton Tune in that I Am Athlete podcast, and that was who he was talking about. If you're talking about that clip, and I was confused by the clip too, that was when he was still with the Arizona Cardinals, and he said, I like that rookie we got out of Houston. He's talking about Clayton Tune. So I don't know if that was it or not. Jerron, you're crazy, bro. He says, plot twist, DeAndre is a white kid. Maybe. Jacob, we'll get into this Steven Nelson thing. That's one of the weirdest stories of the year, to be honest. Is Steven Nelson going to try to hold out or force a trade? That's what the people really want to talk about. People like Steven Nelson made some waves yesterday. You see those 4 eyeballs that he put on that tweet that he was with Athletes First? How did Pro Football Talk miss that? Why the hell is Florio talking about Aaron Rodgers and DeAndre Hopkins and not Steven Nelson changing agents? The hell is wrong with you, Florio? Come on, man. No, Rick, he said QB from Houston. Like, let's not be silly. Come on. It was not like he was that we got in from Houston. That's who we talked about. Let's not. Rick, you're in timeout too, sir. I'm sorry. It is very clear. You're in timeout, sir. Go think about what you've done. Tyler says that Steven Nelson is flexing his muscles to get D-Hop. Who knows, man? I've had to put 2 people in timeout. Let's bring in Texans Cap. Cap, People are acting foolish today.
You're just issuing that ban hammer like nothing.
Well, I mean, you can't just make stuff up. You can't. You can make one thing up. You can't just make stuff up.
Yeah,
Like,
no. One's a freebie, two is a goner. I get
one's
you.
a freebie, two's a goner.
Yeah.
100%. How you living? What are you making of this DeAndre Hopkins thing? I want to make it clear. I don't doubt that DeAndre Hopkins is saying these things. All I'm saying is I've heard him talk about what he wants in specifically in an extended period, and this never came up. So that is what I'm saying. Why is it out there? I think it's to create buzz. I think it's to create attention. I think he likes the love, and I don't necessarily think the market is what he would hope that it will be. If he waits it out, maybe it will be. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think, if you really think about it, Hopkins has never been a free agent, right? He signed an extension with Houston, got traded, another extension with Arizona. So he's never got to do this. He's never got to be out there and explore and visit different teams. So it doesn't sound like he's in any kind of rush or any kind of hurry. It sounds like, maybe mandatory mini camp or training camp's kind of like a soft deadline kind of thing. So he's no rush. So yeah. Let's build up. Let's drum up some interest. Let's go visit a team or two. Let's spike it up a little bit and see what we can build up from the market. But timing of his release it's brutal for him. I mean, if he was released back
that's rough, man. Especially knowing they're willing to take the hit. Like if they would have just realized that back in the day. I mean, I think it's safe to say that Baltimore would be happy giving him that deal instead of Odell.
Yeah. I think Baltimore would tell you for sure that they probably overextended themselves a little bit on Beckham. And if you were to put them two up against each other for the same type of contract, I would take Hopkins in a heartbeat versus Beckham coming off of 2 ACLs in 2 games in 2 years. But, that's going to be the tricky part is at this time of the year, it's very difficult for teams to have additional money that Hopkins may be looking for laying around. They've got their money spent. They've got their money allocated. They got their rosters built. They've got their game plan set. And to shift all that around to accommodate a player who's wanting $15-16 million a year, it's a little bit difficult for some teams. And so I'm with you. I'm really, really interested to see if the market is there, what he thinks it may be. I'm just not entirely sure it will be.
What is he worth? Like if all things were equal, let's just say we go back and he's on the market when free agency begins. What are we talking about the worth? Because it is a discussion worth having. Like, let's be honest, man. Like, I know that we have fond memories of DeAndre Hopkins, and there was a point where there was actually a debate, who's going to be the best wide receiver in franchise history when all is said and done. And there was a debate for many years, is this the guy the best in the game? I told him himself I thought he was the best in the game. At the press conference, I think it was after the Cowboys game in 2018 or whatever.
Yeah. I mean,
what is he right now? Like, I think there is a question, like, what is he right now? He's about to be 31 years old. He's been roughed up the last couple of years. He had the PED suspension.
There's a lot of market dynamics against him than for him at this point. Like we talked about with the timing, his past history, there's a little bit of I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this, but there's some intrigue out there about his attitude and rapport amongst other players. And, do you want somebody who's going to come in and is like, I don't need to practice, but I'm going to show up on game day, which we've seen that over and over here in Houston, that the dude shows up on Sundays. And, all those things you start to put together, it just depends on the team and where they're at and what kind of mentality they have in the front office and what kind of culture they're building. But I mean, he could be anywhere from $8-9 million a year up to $15-16 million a year. It just depends on how he can derive this market out and finagle that money. But if he were to come in at the Odell Beckham contract at 15 plus, I think it was $3 million incentives, I think that would be a pretty solid get for him. I'm just not entirely sure he's going to get it. I think it may come in a little bit below that, but he's definitely going to be seeking that Beckham contract as a floor for sure.
And I think those variables are interesting that you mentioned. I got Texans Cap in here talking about DeAndre Hopkins. Subscribe, number one source for Texans digital content. It is the Locker Room. I think it's interesting when you mention those variables because a lot of people think, and I think it's kind of just the world we live in. Oh, you got to be on this side or that side. You're either 100% with it or you're 100% against it. And you say this and it's blah blah blah. It's like, dude, there's a player's point of view, there's a team point of view. From the point of view of DeAndre Hopkins, you come into a situation, it's a new system, it's a bunch of young guys. Right now, the coaching staff has the full attention of the players. Like, all attention is on DeMeco Ryans, all attention is on Bobby Slowick, and they're sitting there and they're learning. And regardless of what they're going to produce or not, that there could be value in that in a few years with that type of development, especially with where you're at right now and you're implementing that system. As soon as someone like DeAndre Hopkins comes in the building, on one hand, you can say he's just going to ball the fuck out. And DeAndre Hopkins on Sunday is going to be ready to go, and you're 3 wins better, and everybody is, gravitating to DeAndre Hopkins, and it's great, and everybody's playing their best ball because of what DeAndre Hopkins can do on the field. And he's having years after 31 like Andre Johnson did, like Larry Fitzgerald did, and it's great, and it's all love here. You can say that. On the other hand, you can say, well, you come in here, it's not great. Players are still going to gravitate to DeAndre Hopkins because he's a freaking legend. And maybe DeAndre Hopkins isn't fully bought into the system. And maybe DeAndre Hopkins, because of the skins he has on the wall, isn't 100% committed to just listening to everything that Bobby Slowick has to say. Or he's not 100% committed to doing the habits that they want to happen, like that they want to develop here. So those are just other variables that happen. And if you look at how things went down in Arizona, we can blame Kyler Murray. They clashed. Like they clashed. Like they 100% clashed.
There's a lot of rumblings out there on that. Yeah.
And you just got like, does it make 100% sense? I think it's fair to ask.
Yeah, that's the critical question I think the Texans are probably asking themselves is, do we bring him in? Does he hamper development? Does he function as a positive member of this organization? And does he buy into what we're trying to do? And those are all those are all valid questions. And you start to put those pieces together and decide, yeah, this guy can come in and fit in. Is he separate the amount of wins that he's worth and things like that? But just, is he here to help the team? Is he here to help cultivate Nico Collins and all these young players that they have? Because he's going to take snaps away from those players. And is it worth potentially hampering development of those younger players by taking their snaps away to bring him in for a win or two for a team that may go from 7 wins to 8 or 9 wins? And that's the question for me. Is it really worth that for 1 year? I mean, if this team was a 9 or 10 win team and Hopkins is coming in to push them over the hump, then I'm all for it. But where they're at in this stage of their trajectory, it just makes me kind of have a little caution on that front.
Yeah. And I mean, if Houston's an option, I kind of look at it as the rest of the league speaking to you. And I know the timing was bad, but it's kind of like the rest of the league speaking to you. Because we can say, well, this team doesn't have cap space. Well,
yeah, you can make cap space.
You know how that is. Like,
you
that
can make cap space. Teams can make cap space.
So is the rest of the league speaking is kind of the question. So that's just where we're at with the DeAndre Hopkins thing. It's interesting. Regardless of what it is, like the ultimate thing about it is cool that regardless of where you sit with DeAndre Hopkins, whether you think they should sign him, whether you think they shouldn't. And I think there's good points for both. Like, I agree. I agree with both sides. I think it's a good discussion worth having.
Going with this, and I agree with you. Yeah.
Just the fact that regardless of whether he's telling the truth or not, that he's willing to say that he's interested in Houston has been something that wouldn't have happened the last couple of seasons.
Yeah. 2 years ago, or last year and the year before, there was the Texans tag. There was, not a team that players wanted to come to. And I'm with you there. The fact that they're getting mentioned with him and he's willing to entertain that idea, regardless of at what level it is.
When.
Yeah. I mean, it's great, and so, but a question I have for you is like, so if Hopkins were to come here, what would be a successful season from him from a numbers perspective, like receptions, yards, things like that. Like, what would you want to see out of him? I certainly wouldn't expect 1,000-yard season out of him. It's like 750, 800, acceptable number to you. Do you have any kind of thoughts on that?
I would want, like, the most important thing for me, because I could easily see him getting 1,000 yards. I mean, I could see him balling out, but I would want the target share to be kind of spread out. I don't want to get in a situation where CJ's,
Staring him down.
The target
did.
share, like at times with Cooks, when Cooks was just with a bunch of non-receivers. Like, I would like to see like over 900 yards and not like a massive target share to where other guys are getting looks and stuff. That would be me for Nuke. But the other thing, we mentioned Nico Collins. Who is hurt the most from DeAndre Hopkins? Because there's actually like Seth brought up a good point. A lot of his production has been in the slot lately. So, I think we look at Nuke and we look at how big and physical he is, and we've seen him do some work as an X in certain places, but you move him around a lot.
Nico can't do that. I mean, I think that's where you're kind of going with that. Like,
so who's hurt the most from it though? Like, who is he impacting the most? It's obvious that he's, everyone kind of take a step back, but who is hurt the most?
I still think at the end of the day, I think Nico is probably still hurt the most, because I think Robert Woods is going to be your down and dirty type of receiver. So that leaves Nook out there at the X position, but maybe they can shift him around, have maybe Woods and Hopkins and Nico on the field at the same time. I don't know if that really makes a whole lot of sense, but you still need some speed out there. But I think it just kind of brings everybody's numbers down. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to hurt Nico Collins more than anybody else, just from a holistic, high level, full season approach.
Here's my confession. I said it today on In the Loop. You can see the video at Sports Radio 610. I'm scared to buy into Nico, but I feel like it's going to happen. It happened, I think, 2 or 3 times with Pharaoh Brown, where this is the thing about Nico Collins, and this is what happens to you. I've covered a lot of training camps with this team. There are some guys that just practice well. There are some guys who practice poorly. I think Riff Raff, Jody High Roller said the practice players are the guys that are always going to try hard. They're always going to look good. And then there's guys that just bring the rice out, like Allen Iverson. We're talking about practice. Nico Collins works his ass off. He's there 45 minutes after. He always comes in shape. He always practices hard.
He's always doing that little run on the jugs.
But I'm always scared to buy into certain guys. And I know, and this is what's tough about it, I know that when I go out there, and we'll be broadcasting live from training camp, we'll be on the field broadcasting during on the Odyssey app. So fire it up, join us on that. I know he's going to look great. I know he's going to look great.
Probably
just like Pharaoh Brown. Yeah. Have you ever watched Pharaoh Brown practice? It's lovely. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I was there with you.
But I know that Nico Collins is going to look great. I know it's about health. Sometimes it's about consistency, but I'm scared to buy into Nico Collins. And my expectations would be this. I think anyone who thinks Nico Collins is the number one receiver, I think that's kind of unfair. Like, Nico Collins establishing himself as like a solid number 2, number 3 receiver that you can count on with like a good receiving core, not like a number 1 or 2 here, but like a guy that around the league, like top 3, you feel okay about it. I think that would be like the ultimate ceiling. I feel like I'm going to, but I already got my shield up because I'm concerned. Because I know he's going to be awesome in practice.
And he's going to get hurt by like week 6. I mean, it's just
man.
I hear you, man. I feel like we're all just a little jaded with Nico. You're just waiting for that other shoe to drop, and for him to pop up the injury report. And it's tough to just, until he proves that he can do it for a majority of the season. I don't even need 17 games. If you can give me like 14 games, that would be fantastic. And he has yet to show that. And until he does, you're always going to feel that way. And he starts off great. He starts off wonderful, shows signs, can make the contested catch, can create a little separation, and then he gets hurt. And it
He
just
stays on the effing practice field
Yeah.
for like 45 minutes.
yeah. It's just
Extra.
it's just tough to buy into that until he can prove otherwise. And if he can come out and prove otherwise this year, then I think he would do very, very well in this system as the primary X receiver. It's just he's got to prove that he can do it, and he has yet to do it.
Yeah, and it's kind of I don't know if unfair is the right term, but like Davis Mills, for where he was drafted, like if he ends up being a backup quarterback, it's a good pick.
Yeah.
But
I'm with
because he was thrown into the situation he was thrown into, we just look at him like he's almost treated like he was drafted in the top 10. He's almost treated like he's like Zach Wilson.
Yeah.
Or something like that. And he's not like that. He was a 3rd round pick. But like Nico, because there's no other receivers, and you like say, well, this guy's got the most talent of any of these guys, although they've had cooks. You kind of look at him a little bit different, although they did get aggressive in going for him. Do you think that at some point Nick Caserio's aggressiveness needs to pay off? Like if we're talking about like true fair evaluations of Nick Caserio, like there's a lot of things that he couldn't control, but some of the aggressive moves that he's made, whether it's Nico, and I know you chart nerds were pissed off at that one. Good God, y'all were mad at the Nico Collins trade. Kenyon Green, the aggressiveness there. Now you have the Shaq Mason deal, the Juice Scruggs. Like at some point, like the aggressive moves that Nick makes, they got to start paying off. I mean, those are going to be the things that you look at the most, right?
Yeah, and I think moving up and being aggressive, specific to the draft, like moving up into the 1st round, that's cool. But moving up into, and I've talked about this a number of times where teams really make and create a ton of value with their 2nd and 3rd round draft selections. You're moving up to get into those 2nd and 3rd round draft selections. They've got to hit, because not only that's where you have your excess value, but you're burning additional value to get up to those spots. Those picks have got to start hitting. And I know we're still early, Mechie had his issues, and we're still in only 1 year of Christian Harris, but they've got to start to see some return on investment with those picks, because you've utilize assets to move up into those picks, and those are where your excess value picks are made. That's where you can create a ton of surplus value, and it, like you said, is perfect. You've got to, at some point, you've got to see some return on investment, and hopefully this is the year. Next year you start to see that return on investment. If you don't start getting some return, there's got to be a lot of questions being asked about his process on getting those players.
Well, I think the real like immediate non-negotiable is the interior line. I mean, I don't think that's,
the offensive line in general, they've got a ton of investment in there, whether it's contracts or draft picks. I mean, there is a lot of investment there.
The O-line though is, not only did you trade for Shaq Mason, you gave him the deal. You traded up for Juice Scruggs. There were some other centers that maybe people liked a little bit more.
Yeah.
I don't pretend to be a center expert. And then the Kenyon Green thing. So, I mean, that's got to be immediate. Like I was talking about this today. Like I was talking about this earlier this week. I think I'll put the video up. I think it's Wednesdays or Tuesdays. Can't even keep up. But like if CJ Stroud sucks this year, it's not going to be an indictment on Nick. It wouldn't be great, especially if your pick is like in the top 2. But I don't think it's like a overwhelming indictment. If Will Anderson struggles, not going to be an overwhelming indictment. D'Amico Ryan struggles, not going to be an overwhelming indictment. Even if some of these young players don't completely develop, but they're inconsistent, not an indictment. But the interior line, that's an indictment on your staff. That's an indictment on Caserio. And there's got to be like some sort of evaluation, because there's just been a pattern of poor interior line play, and they've made some decisions to where you just kind of wonder like what they're looking at. Like, why is Justin Britt brought back for a 2nd year? You brought back Scott Questenberry. I'm assuming that he's maybe a backup. Hell, he could get cut.
Yeah.
You looked at Juice Scruggs and said, this is the guy we want to take. the top 65 pick, and we want to trade to do so. Shaq Mason's never played in this system, but you automatically assume that it's a trade, and I have no problem with the trade. But then we want to give him a contract. Kenyon Green, you have all these other needs. Let's see what happens with him. There's a lot going on there. There's a lot of injuries and stuff like that. But my point is, the interior offensive line, you've done a lot of crap, man. That should be paid off immediately.
No return. I mean, you see the rankings come out, and you see the team that has like their offensive tackles is top 8, top 9, and then the interior is like 32nd. And that's such an off balance in performance. And in today's league, with the advent of more pressure from the interior versus coming around the edge, there's got to be some kind of improvement on the interior O-line this year. I think we all can agree that Howard and Tunsil are very solid tackles. Tunsil's a very, very good tackle. Howard is a solid tackle. But the interior offensive line has got to show something. And whoever's out there, whether it's Scruggs, Green, and Mason, which I think we all kind of assume that's going to be the case. But until that's solved, I mean, you can have tackles that are holding the edge, but quarterbacks are not doing 7 and 9 step drops anymore. They're staying in the pocket. So this interior line has got to step up and perform. And that's going to directly show and put pressure on CJ Stroud to perform within a pocket that may be collapsing on the interior versus the edges. And we see, I'm not saying Stroud's not mobile or anything like that, but I think he's going to operate in the pocket pretty heavily. So you really need that interior offensive line to perform and step up this year. And they've got a ton of investment, first round pick, big contract with Shaq Mason, Drew Scruggs, Jarrett Patterson, Scott Quessenberry. I mean, they've got to figure this out. They're on their third offensive line coach. Something has got to give. They've got to find some cohesion. They've got to I don't even need this offensive line to be a top 10 offensive line. I just don't need them to be a bottom 5 offensive line.
No, you can't. There's nothing.
Yeah. If they can just be like a top 15 performance of whatever metric you want to look at, that would be a step up.
119, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Says Kenyon Green was a Lovey guy. You don't draft him for a Shanahan offense. That's unfair to Lovey. Lovey was a disaster. Lovey wasn't going to coach anywhere else, but they didn't draft guys for Lovey. If they did, they would have never drafted Derek Stingley because Derek Stingley didn't fit into that system either. So they drafted guys that they thought were best players that could fit in, many systems. So I would not label anyone a Lovey guy. I don't think that's fair for him.
No, I think it's unfair to label Kenyon Green not a zone guy until we see it. I mean, the team primarily was a gap scheme last year. So, we saw this. I looked at the numbers the same as well. I mean, Howard is much better in the zone versus a gap scheme. And so hopefully we can see the same thing from Green and whoever else is out there. But I think it's unfair to see, especially we see the growth from a lot of rookies from year 1 to year 2. So I think it's fair to just give Kenyon Green that opportunity to showcase what he can do in his own scheme.
Here's the real question that everybody wants to know. We finally get into the A topic.
Okay.
What is Steven Nelson worth? What are we doing here? When I see Steven Nelson,
I got this.
Hire an agent. And I see Steven Nelson putting eyeball emojis, trying to get all this this buildup, and then talking about pressure and diamonds. He's always been an entertaining guy, confidence level high. I think he's okay. He is 30. He's been on a lot of teams. He was all right. What is Steven Nelson worth? Whether it's trade, whether it's contract, what are we doing here? Help this make sense.
So let's look at it from a contract perspective. So, he's going to make $4.5 million this year, absent any incentives earned. I think it is fair to say that he has outperformed that contract. And what I feel like he wants is more of a respect from a contract perspective. I think he's looking to say, get my APY up to X number. And if that's $8 or $9 million, his current contract is 4.5 APY. If you get that up to 8 or 9, give him a little bit of a raise this year, float some guaranteed money his way, he'll be fine. But I think he's got that perception of himself that, I'm underpaid and I've overperformed, so this is what I deserve.
Yeah.
As for like trade, I don't think there's really any trade value, to be honest with you. I mean, if he wants to try to force a trade, I think every team is gonna be like, yeah, we'll give you a 7th in 2026 or something.
But then he wants a contract. Like,
yeah,
this is the thing. Like,
exactly.
you just signed Shaq Griffin for 1 year, $4.5 million. Like, I don't know if Shaq Griffin's going to be as good as Steven Nelson. I like what Steven Nelson did last year, but I mean,
he hasn't started practicing yet. Griffin, that is.
I didn't even have a helmet the other day.
Yeah. So, but I do believe that Nelson was kind of a safety relief valve for the Nelson situation. And we'll kind of just wait and see what happens. But should the team acquiesce and give him a little bit, I'm all for giving the players a little bit extra, but at the same time, you've got to facilitate the rest of your roster. And I think it's fair to say maybe you give him a 1-year extension.
Why would you?
I think based on where the team is situationally wise at the cornerback position, they've got a lot of age there beyond just beyond Derek Stingley. Des King's getting a little bit older, and he really not as much of, he played well outside, last year as best he could, but he's really not an outside kind of guy. And so I don't know that you really want to play a hardball with Steve Nelson. I'm not saying that he has the performance and the repertoire to say, I demand this is what I want, and this is what I'm going to get. But I think he has outperformed his contract to the point where you can adjust and give him a 1-year extension, a little bit of a guarantee, a little bit of a raise this year. It doesn't hurt the salary cap. You can structure it that way. But I don't foresee a need to go out to like $8-9 million a year on like a 2-year extension or anything like that. Is what I would view the situation. I think it's fair to just say, hey, we'll give you a little bit of raise this year, or we can tack on some additional incentives, something just to kind of get you back going. But I just get the impression that he just wants that APY. He just wants the respect of that APY number, which is dumb from a player's perspective, but that's what they value. And that at the end of the day,
that's why it gets hilarious, because, and you see it all the time.
I mean, I can give you a fluffed up, stupid contract with a stupid APY number if that's what you really want.
Well, the other thing is, like, sometimes you see these guys, and I think I've seen Hopkins do it. I've seen some receivers do it, where you sign a certain contract, and then in year 4 or 5, you're making this much per year, and all of a sudden you hear people saying, "Oh my God, he's the 20th highest paid receiver, and he's produced at a top 5 level." It's like, well, yeah, he signed a contract and got a big ass signing bonus. In year 1, you made this much. Year 2, you made this much. And then year 3, you were supposed to make this much. Sometimes I just think it's funny. Like Steven Nelson on the streets, like we say outperformed. If you're evaluating players right, and you're given a journeyman corner, a 1 year, 4.5, or 2 years, $4.5 million, whatever each year type, and you get what you got out of Steven Nelson, I think that's normal.
I don't think he had like an
all-pro caliber year or something like that.
No, it was a solid free agent signing. They really wanted James Bradbury, and that didn't work. And so Steven Nelson was their backup plan, and it worked out very well. I mean, he was a very good player for his contract value. I'm not trying to say compared to like Jalen Ramsey or anything like that.
Yeah.
But it was a good, solid signing. The player outplayed his contract, in my opinion. So I think it's fair to just come back and offer him just a little bit more. Will he take that? That's the question. And probably not. He probably wants more than what the team is willing to give. And so, but luckily on the team side of things, the CBA just kind of has their back on fines and anything like that. If he wants to sit out, mandatory minicamp, if he wants to sit out training camp,
Okay.
he really does. He
Hold
really
out,
does.
man. That would be
Yeah.
funny.
And
Like,
that's
honestly,
fine. He
that
doesn't
would
really
be
have
awesome.
he doesn't have any recourse. I mean, now even with the new CBA, fines can't even be forgiven like they were before. I mean, they're mandatory.
He needs to have a pay me Nick shoes.
Yeah.
He needs to go Dante Robinson remix, pay me Nick kicks.
Yeah. So I
'Cause
mean,
I'm amused by the guy. I'm amused by the guy. I like him.
He's going to have to have a little compromise, and if he wants a raise, he's probably not going to get what he wants, but he can probably get a little bit, and and move on, and we'll talk again after the season's over.
Lamont asks, do players know the team's financial situation when they're negotiating?
It depends on their agent and what the player really wants to know about, but I think a good agent would explain to the player the team situation and where they're at with their cap, with their cash, things like that. I would expect that from my agent to, know what the team's situation is and what they can do, knowing that, hey, they signed Shaq Griffin as your safety relief valve at a price of 90% of what you're already being paid this year. And, those kind of things I think a good agent would explain to him. But on the flip side, the agent has to go with what the player wants. And if he wants more money, then that's the agent's job to do, is go get more money.
Does Mulligeta have does he turn people away? Like I'm not trying to be.
I don't know
funny.
the answer to that.
Asking.
Yeah,
Well,
no,
I mean,
I don't know that they're like vetting players.
Like if Christian Kirksey called David Mulligeta and said, "Hey, I need you to represent me, dog," what would he say?
I would assume he would say, "Yeah, no problem. Come on." I don't
Really.
I don't know that he would turn down any specific players, because they're not a player like a vet.
Agents aren't like attorneys. Agents aren't like attorneys where, if you bring a certain case to like if I went
well,
to
there's
Rusty
nothing to
Hardin-
lose out of that, right? I mean, he's not fronting him any money like he would a rookie or anything like that, to get through, to prepare for the draft and for the combine and things like that. I mean, it's just a veteran. He changes hands, and there's nothing to front. There's no money out of Mulligeta's pocket if he's able to sign him.
Could Steven Nelson front Mulligeta? Could Steven Nelson be like, "Hey, I'm gonna give you an extra 3% because
there's
I
a cap.
I want to look bigger. I want to look bigger, and I want you to represent me."
There's a cap on agent fees, so there's only so much they can do. But
I'm gonna give
it does make me wonder.
$100,000 retainer.
Maybe there's something that I'm not aware of. I don't know, but I know there's a cap on the fees. But it does make me wonder. And I know this is conspiracy theory, put my tinfoil hat on, but I don't know if he's trying to leverage Mulligeta's relationship with Houston, which I think is fine. I don't think there's any concerns there, but I feel like he's trying to outsmart himself by trying to utilize that relationship between the team, the agent, to try to pressure more money out of it. And I think Nick Caserio is just going to be like, laugh that off. If I had to guess, that he's just going to be like, I give two, what's about that. We'll do business with you if it wants to make sense. And if you want to come in and have a cordial discussion on numbers that make sense for both team and for player, then we're all for it. And if not, then have fun playing on your $4.5 million salary this year. So I think he's going to push. He's going to try to get some more money. I don't, like I said, I'm not opposed to the team giving him a little bit more, but I certainly don't think that they're gonna go out of their way to really meet the numbers that he wants to meet. Because if you were to release Steven Nelson today, would he go get $9 million a year?
No, he's going to get what Shaq got. That's why I don't think he outplayed his contract. Like, I think he performed at a decent level to where he's right now trying to stay into the league. In the league, he's trying to play as good as he can. He's trying to put tape out there. If you go into another situation, like if let's say he got traded, like Steven Nelson might not fit into that situation as good as he does here.
Yeah, it's a new team going to give him another contract.
Like there's a chance. So like this is why it's so funny to me, because I don't fault anyone for trying to get what they're going. It's like I compared it today to the Lonnie Johnson. Remember when Lonnie Johnson was going into a contract year, and Lonnie Johnson was just, anytime something happened with the Texans, he was talking crap about them. Like, he was the first guy to go on social media and talk crap about the Texans when they were a joke. And they were a complete joke, but the part of them being a joke allowed you to actually stay on the football field, because you haven't been able to stay on the football field since. And Lonnie Johnson was like so lost in the sauce that Lonnie Johnson thought he could just fire up the organization on Twitter and say all this stuff. And they were very patient with him. And then when his contract year was coming after Justin Reed left, he talked about, yeah, it's either I get my big contract, or, I could do what Justin just did and go get my contract. And it's like, bro, you're not Justin Reed. And we all sat there and we looked at it and we were like, the best thing for Lonnie Johnson would be to play as good as you can here, be 100% bought into what they're doing, and maybe you find a home here and they find a place for you in between being a mediocre cover safety that has decent ball skills, a pretty good special teams player in a corner, and figure something out and just go out there and handle your business. Instead, he wanted to do a three episode reality TV show and then stop it when he got traded. And I think he's been on 3 teams since. Yeah. Like, that's what it feels like with Steven Nelson right now, is that it's not the worst situation that you're in right now. It's not the worst.
It's not, but I think you also want to show the locker room that you're willing to discuss and reward performance. And I get your take on whether he outperformed his contract or not. But from my perspective, he did. And so those are the kind of things you look at and say, yeah, we can adjust things a little bit. Maybe not meet the number you're looking for, but we can adjust things a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. We'll see. Cap, fun times.
Yeah, man. It's good to chat with you.
Appreciate you, man. How you living, man? Someone in the comments said Cap looks well rested for once.
I am, man. I've taken a break from the show for a little bit. I was on vacation for a week. Came back Tuesday, family vacation. You'll get to learn about those here.
Where'd y'all go?
We went to New Braunfels, so we went to Schlitterbahn a couple days. Went to Fiesta, Texas. My daughter is a roller coaster freak. Anything bigger and better and scarier, she is all about it. Took her to the Natural British Caverns because she's big into geology, so that was really cool for her. And my son had a good time at Schlitterbahn, so it was a good time. It was a good getaway for us, and I am rested now. I'm trying to catch up at work, and doing well. I'm rested, ready for a nice kind of quiet period in the NFL, and we'll get hopping.
No such thing, brother.
I know it's 12 months a year, but no, I'm hoping mandatory minicamp falls on a day that I can get away from work for a little bit. We'll see. Not entirely sure. If not, then I'll try to catch some training camp days. But man, you're just kicking ass over here, man. I love to see it.
Yes, sir. Love to see you, man. Looking forward to covering this thing with you throughout. Texans Cap. Appreciate you, my friends. There you go. The legend, the man, the myth, the legend. The trade chart king. The contract king.
I love the trade chart.
Appreciate you. All right, brother.
All right, buddy. Have a good one.
Man. Texans Cap. Subscribe right along. Subscribe to Cap's channel as well. Appreciate everyone for coming through. Fun times ahead, man. Steven Nelson cracks me up. Go get it. Go get it if you can. Seems a little bit interesting to me. The DeAndre Hopkins stuff, to reset what we talked about earlier. Look, I understand both point of views. There's no doubt that he is putting it out there that he is interested in Houston. My question is, what changed? Why? Is the market speaking to him? And does it make sense for the Houston Texans? Let's get your comments as well. Appreciate everyone for rolling through. People are asking about In the Loop. Patrick, I'm off tomorrow. Everyone took Monday off. Myself and Lopez decided we would move it to Friday. I've left a lot of meat on the bone when it comes to the the off days, the comp days, they actually say I'm too gassed up. I'll still be here though. I'll still handle some business. There'll be a video dropping at 8:30, and I will still be here. But tomorrow, 3-day weekend, gonna be fun. I got to get ready to move into the new crib. So I appreciate everyone for rolling through. Subscribe, like. Thanks very much. Love you all. No matter what happens, whether Steven Nelson gets his bag, whether Nuke gets his bag, whether Nuke is here or there, when it comes to this Texans game, we are all in this together. All love. Appreciate you.
Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk, yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize every angle's what we really do. We the source, we the pulse of the city too. Landlocked, got the game in the headlock. Localize every time, can't stop, won't stop. Yeah, we top 2 and we not 2. Plugged in daily digital on YouTube. We